morning sun shines on the gleaming hide of a muscular ranch horse. The aroma of bacon and coffee drifts from the wood cook stove at a cow camp. Silver spurs jingle as the men and women of the West get set for another day in the saddle. From the heart of Canada's finest ranching country, this is the Spirit of the West with rancher and horse trainer Hugh McLennan and his collection of music, poetry, and conversations with the folks who live and work with horses and cattle in the Spirit of the West.
You know, when a working cowboy climbs into the saddle and rides off over the hill just as the last stars have faded away and before the sun is even over the horizon, he sure doesn't know what that day might have in store, but he knows he'll be trusting that faithful horse he's riding with his life. And today, you'll hear an amazing story of one episode in a cowboy's day that he'll never forget.
I had wood oxbow stirrups, metal-bound oxbow stirrups, and I knew that stirrup was crushed on my foot.
And on the horse training file, I'll discuss how working against a horse's strength is futile and working with it is a much better idea. And on the Rangeland news, a lot of us are already aware of the fact that a lot of ranchers and farmers are paying a way more for production costs and in some case getting more for what they produce.
Livestock product prices all up from a year ago except hogs.
And digging down into the vault, we'll find world-class horseman Teddy Robinson.
He steps off and he's looking over his shoulder and he's outrunning this horse.
Got another beautiful classic song of the West and the story of where it came from, along with a great collection of the kind of music that makes you want to saddle up that good horse and head out along the trail. And you'll hear from a lifelong working cowboy who remembers his favorite horses and tells us what made them special right after Wes English and his brothers get things started.
Well, my saddle is my home and my horse is all I own. When the sun goes slipping down at the end of day, it's there I'll make my bed as the sky turns fiery red, and I'll sit and sing my song the western way. Drive the herd, earn my wage, love to smell the prairie sage, cactus flowers all around, nights are calm, coyotes howl. Have no family, have no kin, only sounds of prairie wind. I'll always live my life the western way. There's a whisper in the wind that the open range will end, but my heart won't be denied. I'll just saddle up and is gonna change, but for me out on the range, I'll always live my life the western way. Whisper in the wind that the open range will end, but my heart won't be denied. I'll just saddle up and ride. I know the world is gonna change, but for me out on the range, I'll always live my life the western way. I'll always live my life the western way.
When working cowboys get together to visit, the conversation more often than not turns to horses, the good ones and the tough ones we've known over the years. And the top hand, Terry Milligan, he told me about one that he thought had given him a heart attack. Literally.
I've got a big brown gelding here that when I left Douglas Lake, they told me I could take 2 horses of my choice, and he isn't the the best horse I ever rode in my life, or great at anything, but he is a pretty good all-around horse now. But I started him as a 2-year-old, and the first time I roped him, I was on a saddle horse. First time I roped him, boy, he come down that rope and just striking and biting, and he is just really on the fight. And I knew I had a problem right there. Boy, he was something else. He was pretty scary too. He is a big colt, really big colt. And I did get him saddled, but it took a long time, and I did get him rode a couple of times, and he was pretty scary. One of the first times I rode him, I'd rode him in the round corral, and I took him down to the arena, and I was going to ride him around. I never had him into the lope, because the round corrals are just a little too tight. Tight to get him into a gallop. So I took him down there. We kind of had a little roping arena we used to play around in, and down the shipping corrals. And I took him down there, and first time I kicked him into the lope, he just bogged his head and went to fucking, and he hit something, and he turned over, and just a perfect somersault, and I kind of landed out on I just dove when he come over, and I remember I landed on my chest, and I looked back, and he come over, and the candle caught me right in the cannon bone there, and oh man, it hurt. I crippled. I got up and I hobbled over, and I got back on him, and I rode him, and I finally did get him loping around. But and for a couple of days there, I had this pain inside my chest. But I never even thought about that, because the horses turn over on you all the time. That was just another day. But for the next 2 or 3 days, I had this pain in my chest, but it was on the inside. It was a little sore on the outside, but I never thought about that. And I thought, holy smoke. My cousin, he just died of a heart attack. And he was only a couple of years older than I was. Gee, that's what it is. I'm having a heart attack. So I went into the doctor. He done an EKG and a blood test, and I forget. And took some X-rays and something. Everything was good. Oh man, I was glad. It was happening. Even the doctor says, "You haven't been in a wreck here lately." I got thinking, I was. His horse turned over on me last Sunday. And I had my Copenhagen box in his pocket. And right over my heart, I get land right on it, and I guess he tore loose all the cartilage around my heart. Man. So
from the snuff can in your pocket.
Copenhagen. I quit chewing Copenhagen, but that same.
Now, when that same horse was a little older, he gave Terry a feeling he'll never forget. It happened one evening at cow camp, and you'll hear the story when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. How about the 2023 Friends of the Spirit of the West Cruise? Well, it happens in January. You will visit 6 different countries, including the United States, Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, Otalco, Mexico, San Juan, Nicaragua, Punta Arenas, Costa Rica, Panama City, Cartagena, Colombia, as well as back to Fort Lauderdale. A 15-day cruise on the Emerald Princess, leaving Los Angeles, and a 2-day Panama Canal experience. Special group farm tour in Costa Rica, and your hosts will be the official Spirit of the West support crew, Mark and Kathy McMillan. And you will be amazed, I think, when you see how low the prices are for this one. So just go to our cruise page at hugh-mcclellan.com or see the cruise Facebook page to find out more. And you can always call the toll-free number, 1-800-530-0131. Did I mention that this one will have everyone flying to Los Angeles on January 16th, 2023. And of course, airfare and hotels are included. And that number again, 1-800-530-0131. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. You know, the relationship is not always smooth and easy at the beginning, but as time goes by, that bond between a cowboy and his horse gets better and better. Here's Terry Milliken with more about that special horse.
I could write a book about this horse, but a year or two before I quit up there anyway. Like our horses there, Dry Farm, the camp was right in the middle of it. It was a square section. Our horse pasture, just the night pasture, was a square section. So, and cow camp horses, we always had about 50 head in there, what we were riding at the time. And they stayed away from people. They didn't, they come around, they got work. So there's no horses in sight, but Jake and Jason, they were shoeing a couple of horses in front of their cabin, and there's another cabin right next door, and I looked down the lake, and here comes Sooner. He's coming into camp here, and he's got his girlfriend with him. He had a mare that they always hung together, and he comes right into camp. He comes right through camp, and I'm sitting on a block of wood there right at the end of the hitching rail where Jake and Jason are shoeing, and he comes right straight beeline right to me, and I'm sitting there, and he puts his foot up on my knee. You know, he come up and he kind of looked at me, and he put his foot up on my knee, and I looked up, oh, you big bugger, what the hell is going on here? And I took him by the cannonball, and I said, what do you want to shake hands or what? Or, and I let his foot go, and he put it down again. He got me again, he put his foot up there again, and I said, gee, what the hell, you know, what's this all about, you know? And I shook his leg again, I put it down. Marilyn was standing behind him, and she said, he's got a wire around his pastern. Oh, and he put his foot back up there again, and sure enough, he had a wire, but it was just pulled right into the hair, and the hair was over on the front, and I couldn't see it. But he must have stepped in a loop of wire, and it twisted off right flush, right behind, and it was tight. Yeah. And I said, look at this, Jake, and he's got a wire around his pastern. And Jake handed me his nippers, and I just cut it off and took it off and rubbed it a little bit. Give him his foot back. He turned around and walked out of camp. Boy, that was the best feeling I ever had in my life. You know, that horse. You know, he was in trouble, and he knew exactly. He come looking for me, and he straight right to me. And a lot of people may not believe it. But
I know, but
Maryland's there, and there was 10 guys present at the time that seen it. You know.
Well, you'll hear a few of Terry Milliken's spectacular calving stories after a great song, one where the words are really worth listening to, this one written and sung by Charlie Ewing.
He was everything to me, a kid's hero, don't you see? There on the flats near dusty San Joaquin, we rode together in the sand, me and that old man. And he told me of the places he had been. Told me of the places he had been. He said he used to buckaroo where the walker wanders through. Those Nevada mountains used to be his home, but he left them far behind to ease a worried mind. Now he's living down in the valley far below. Living down in the valley far below. Snow lies deep in Donner Pass, Sierra winters long. That Carson woman's messing up his mind. Come on, old friend, and have a drink. I'll buy another round, and we'll leave these memory mountains far behind. We'll leave these memory mountains far behind. Now his passion and his pity was a girl in Carson City. They met and married 40 years ago. Well, she stole away his heart, tore his world apart, when she left him colder than Sierra snow. Left him colder than Sierra snow. The snow lies deep deep in Donner Pass, Sierra winters long. That Carson woman's messing up his mind. Come on, old friend, and have a drink. I'll buy another round, and we'll leave these memory mountains far behind. Leave these memory mountains far behind. Cattle waiting for us come the dawn. There's a pale light in the east. We can grab an hour at least and climb those memory mountains later on. Climb those memory mountains later on. The snow lies deep in Donner Pass, Sierra winters long. That Carson woman's messing up his mind. Come on, old friend, and have a drink. I'll buy another round, and we'll leave these memory mountains far behind. We'll leave these memory mountains far behind.
Memory Mountains from Charlie Ewing's latest CD, and oh boy, Charlie's got his share of cabin stories as well. And right now, with some of those, here's Terry Milliken again.
Cabin up there, and like I say, there was we had 2,800 head, and 700 of them were yearlings, and there was only 2 of us, and we were humping. I was using that big horse, and I can show you videos where I'd be off, rope a cow and tie her down, and I'd be off trying to get it, in there, laying on my belly in the mud and the snow and everything else, and in my underwear, my sleeve rolled up, and
you
in
can
there,
reach one back foot that's upside down.
Yeah, and that big horse, he's right there, his nose is right there, and he just won't leave me, helping me, everywhere I went, he's right there and just helping.
Did you pack calves on him?
Never did try, but I'm sure I could. But,
I've had a few I could do that with, but I found the darn trouble is if I'm trying to get the cow in somewhere, like if it's real cold and the calf's got to come in, I have a lot of trouble getting that cow to follow me if I got the calf on the horse, because that calf is just up a little too high. I know it's a kind of a classic picture of the guy packing a calf in and the cow following, but whenever I try it, I can't get that darn cow to come along.
Usually the calf's got the scours and running down your shaft though.
Still to come, another true life episode that Terry had with what he says was the best horse he ever rode, and it almost changed his life. In fact, it did somewhat. When the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West.
Stories from the vault, from the Spirit of the West. This is where we dig deep for some of the most amazing stories from the folks who bring some heartwarming, knee-slapping, spellbinding episodes.
Teddy Robinson has become one of the leading horsemen in the world, champion of the world's best horseman competition several times, and in his event, there's nobody better.
I've probably been very lucky, and I've actually had never seen a bad work in my whole career till this year at Snaffle Biffy, and a gal got killed, on a horse accident, and it was a bad deal, but it was an out of control horse in my opinion. But all the times I've been there, you see a lot of horses go down, you see different things, and I've never seen anybody hurt. There's a guy in our country by the name of Russell Dilday. He's probably as good an athlete as I've ever seen, and he's funny as can be. And I watched a horse at Reno one year. He's running straight down Reno, and this horse does a header. Just does a complete flip. He steps off and he's looking over his shoulder and he's outrunning this horse as it's flipping behind him like it was nothing. And it's just amazing, how it is. But this event is pretty darn safe, when you know your horsemanship.
From a radiator cap to an engine block, BCTractorParts.com is your source for whatever you need to keep that essential implement in top shape. Specializing in quality new replacement parts for agricultural tractors, Massey Ferguson, Ford, John Deere, David Brown, Case, International Harvester, Universal Deutz, Leyland, Landini, Oliver, Fiat, Alice, Zetor, White, and a lot more. If you don't have internet, just call Mark at 250-395-0960. One click or one call, and the parts will be on their way. BCTractorParts.com. Well, Rangeland news is next after another pretty good song. She was known as the first lady of chuck wagon racing. Iris Glass passed away in July 2008, and I've got some great memories of the 1968 Calgary Stampede chuck wagon races, with Iris being the color commentator along with the legendary Joe Carberry calling the races, and we still have a black and white photo of Gladys along with Joe, Lauren Ball, and Dorsey Lockey from the CFSC broadcast team. With me on my appy we called Dandy, and I did interviews and commentaries right from the infield on that great little horse. And Al Young wrote a neat song about Iris Glass. He calls it Grandma Iris.
There's a lady in the chuck barns who's a legend. She's been called the wagon racing queen. She says there's wagon racing in her bloodstream. If she says it, that's exactly what she means. She's been at it since she can't remember, always heading down another road. It's the only kind of life she's ever wanted. She would never think of staying home. Everybody calls her Grandma Iris. Iris, she calls everybody friend. Her deep down love for horses keeps her going. She'll be out there racing till the end. Now her dad ran Calgary in the very first one. That was back in 1923. Since that time the family's never missed one. They'll be there, that's a guarantee. And her family tree's got wheels, spokes for branches. There's tent poles, neck yokes, and double trees. Names like Louder, Glass, and Cosgrave make quite a wagon racing legacy. Everybody calls her Grandma Iris. Iris, she calls everybody friend. Her deep down love for horses keeps her going. She'll be out there racing till the end. Well, I guess she's probably seen 10,000 races, and everyone is better than the last. She can't hardly wait until the next one. She'll be there, her only thought is fast. No, Iris hardly ever sees the spotlight. She's too busy back behind the scenes. So when you see her, tip your hat and tell her howdy, and acknowledge the wagon racing queen. Everybody calls her Grandma Iris. Iris, she calls everybody friend. Her deep down love for horses keeps her going. She'll be out there racing till the end.
The Rangeland News from the Spirit of the West. a roundup of issues and events from the world of agriculture.
At the top of page 1, it says some of the most recent data shows farmers and ranchers experienced a lot of rising production costs, but in some categories, prices for what they produced also went up. And here's Gary Crawford to sort it all out.
Rising commodity prices received by farmers in June, rising prices paid by farmers for what they need to do business. That's the gist of the latest USDA report on ag prices, showing that during June, the index of prices received by farmers was up 0.2% from May, 26% higher than June of 2021. The prices paid index rising 0.4% during June, taking it 13% higher than a year ago. Some specific commodities, corn prices averaged $7.37 a bushel, 11 cents stronger than May, and $1.17 stronger than June a year ago. June did bring moderation in wheat prices. They dropped by $1.35 during June, but the average price, $9.55, still $3.32 higher than June of 2021. Soybeans, they kept going up. They gained 30 cents in June. Average price, $16.40 a bushel. That's up $1.90 from a year ago. Livestock product prices all up from a year ago, except hogs. Those averaged $4 a hundredweight lower than June last year. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
A rush to locally produced meat, partly necessitated by more than 2 years of the onset of COVID-19, has spawned consumers' interest into direct-to-consumer processing businesses, according to a group of Kansas State University experts. Dustin Pendle, an agricultural economist with K-State Research and Extension, said, while consumers have always expressed an interest in locally produced meat, Kansas has been in increasing demand for local direct-to-consumer meat processing businesses. And Jessie Vifham is an assistant professor at K-State's Department of Animal Science and Industry, and she noted that from January 2020 to March 2022, the Kansas Department of Agriculture granted licenses to 7 new custom meat processing facilities in the state. Ranches across the American West could make their grazing practices more sustainable, it says, through a virtual fence system being developed by a joint University of Idaho project. Newly awarded federal funding kickstarted a 4-year field project for researchers at U of I and Washington State University to test the safety and the efficacy of a prototype virtual fence system that uses novel features to manage cows, sheep, and other grazing livestock with a minimal ecological footprint. The new technology under development aims to provide a low-cost tool for sustainable livestock and land management that performs reliably in the mountainous western states and provinces where existing virtual systems really struggle to provide a reliable GPS signal. Commercial virtual fence systems deliver an electric shock to a cow's neck when the animal approaches a virtual barrier, and these systems eliminate the need for wire fencing by relying on GPS technology, but they do require subscriptions and costly on-the-ground signal towers. Virtual fencing systems simplify moving fence locations, but they do require routine updates, battery replacement, and recharging, and the equipment also costs up to several $100s per cow. Apparently the way it works is, and when a cow travels to the end of the territory, as soon as she starts to step across that invisible line, she gets a shock in the ear. Well, I think we're a little ways from seeing that being common practice at this point. Now, is that wild cow high-headed and nervous because that's how her parents were? Well, some new studies have shown that cattle temperament can serve as an indicator of how the cattle have been handled. Temperament has a reported heritability value of approximately 0.4 to 0.5 on a scale of 0.0 to 1.0, and they say that indicates that environment, how they're handled, also has a strong influence. Cattle that are handled using a low-stress stockmanship practice have been observed to have improved rates of gain. A study showed that the abruptly weaned feeder cattle that were claimed and handled with low-stress practices during the processing had an increased rate of gain by 2.92 pounds a day versus 2.70 pounds a day for conventionally handled cattle from day 19 through day 95 after arrival at the feedlot and had 29 pounds heavier hot carcass weight. Well, there's a yearling and regular cattle sale at the BC Livestock Co-op Kamloops Yards on August 23rd, a regular cattle sale in Williams Lake on August 25th, and the regular sale in the Vanderhoof Yards August 26th. And you can get all the information and see the sale streaming live at bclivestock.bce.ca. Meanwhile, at the Innisfail Auction Market, Innisfail, Alberta, regular cattle sales every Wednesday, getting started at 9 o'clock in the morning with butcher cows and bulls, and that's followed by other classes of cattle. And you can get all the details at InnisfailAuctionMarket.com, and you can call Danny, Mark, or Dwayne at 1-800-710-3166. That brings us down to the final item, and the story as I heard it said that an old cowboy who was pretty savvy and they said just as tough as rawhide finally died, and he went to heaven, and at the pearly gates St. Peter said, "Gee, we've looked over your records and we can't really find anything good or bad, and I'm not sure if we can let you in. I'll tell you what, can you tell us anything you did in your life that might help us decide?" And the old cowboy thought for a minute, and he said, "Sure. I was riding my horse down this country road when I saw a group of real nasty-looking biker types with big tattoos and leather jackets and chains, and they'd pulled over this lady in her car, and they really had her scared. So I got off my horse, and I grabbed my rope, and I went right up to the leader of that gang, and I yanked that ring right out of his upper lip. And I said that if him and his gang didn't leave that lady alone, they'd have to deal with me." Wow, St. Peter said, "That's impressive. When did this happen?" The cowboy said, "About 3 minutes ago." And that's the Rangeland News. Coming up on the horse training file, I've seen folks make this mistake many times. They try to work against the strength of the horse rather than with it. And there's another absolutely unforgettable story from Terry Milliken when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. You know, there are some things you just can't make a horse do until you make him think it's his idea. I'll discuss working with the strength of a horse instead of against it on the horse training file coming right up. How about the 2023 Friends of the Spirit of the West Cruise? Well, it happens in January. You will visit 6 different countries, including the United States, Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, Otalco, Mexico, San Juan, Nicaragua, Punta Arenas, Costa Rica, Panama City, Cartagena, Colombia, as well as back to Fort Lauderdale. A 15-day cruise on the Emerald Princess, leaving Los Angeles, and a 2-day Panama Canal experience. Special group farm tour in Costa Rica, and your hosts will be the official Spirit of the West support crew, Mark and Kathy McMillan. And you will be amazed, I think, when you see how low the prices are for this one. So just go to our cruise page at hugh-mcclellan.com or see the cruise Facebook page to find out more. And you can always call the toll-free number, 1-800-530-0131. Did I mention that this one will have everyone flying to Los Angeles on January 16th, 2023. And of course, airfare and hotels are included. And that number again, 1-800-530-0131.
Now it's time for the Horse Training File, brought to you by Irvine Tack and Western Wear, Canada's largest Western store.
Here at Irvine Tack and Western Wear, they get it. You're busy. Between work, family, chores, finding time for shopping can be a challenge, right? Solution? Irvine's online. Buy now and take advantage of free shipping on orders over $100. Some conditions apply. Western Wear with a welcome twist at your fingertips. Visit irvines.ca or stop in today, exit 305 off Highway 2 by Crossfield.
Canada's largest Western store.
Working with horses' strength, not against it, is something I think we should keep in mind. Now, here's an example. You'd like your horse to stand still, but he insists on moving. You really can't make him not move, but you can make him move more until it occurs to him that standing still is a better option. A rider has a horse that would start backing up as soon as she put her foot in the stirrup to get on. Well, you almost can't stop him from backing up and force him to stand still, but you can make him back up more and more and more until it occurs to him that maybe standing still is a better option. And sometimes, if a horse is pretty fresh, when you step on him and you want him just to walk, or even trot slowly, but he wants to lope, usually I like to walk and trot for several minutes at the start of the ride, and I don't usually ask for a lope until I hear that great snorting sound of the horse blowing some air out through his nose. And once I hear that, then I'll ask him for a lope. But sometimes, if he's really eager to go, I'll just let him lope off for a long time, preferably up a long hill, until he thinks that, maybe slowing down is a better option. And sometimes it comes down to the difference between teaching the horse and correcting him. When he gives you the wrong answer because he doesn't know the right answer, it's best to show him the right way by making it his best and easiest choice. But if he gives you the wrong answer even though you know he knows the right answer, then correcting him is what you need to do. And boy, it's been a few busy weeks, and we do as much of the work as possible without getting off our horses. And at the end of those long days, boy, I enjoy watching them tie into their daily feeding of Hoffman's horse ration. Find out all about it at hoffmanshorseproducts.com. The way the Canada Revenue Agency deals with ranchers and farmers has changed a lot in the last few years, and the financial decisions we make today can have a long-lasting impact on our bottom line far into the future. It really helps to have a trusted professional who really understands your situation to guide you with all your accounting requirements and your tax preparation. Having an accountant who knows the difference between a Hereford and a heifer, what a slick and backgrounding are, and that Alfalfa and Timothy are not just names from a storybook really helps. Kathy McMillan of PMT Chartered Professional Accountants understands the intricacies of specialized programs like Agri-Stability and Agri-Invest. She understands the demands on your time and can help you spend more time doing your job and less time dealing with endless piles of paperwork. See PMTaccountants.com or call toll-free 877-383-8081. Terry Milliken is typical of so many working cowboys these days, and the reason they put up with the heat, the cold, the wind, the low wages is that they really like cattle and they really love horses. You'll hear another touching story from Terry after Texas cowboy R.J. Vandegrip.
As a puncher, I have favored life on ranges far from town. Beneath stars o'erhead, I made my bed, sometimes on frozen ground. Saddled up at the break of dawn in the wind, the dust and mud. Not having any place called home didn't matter much. So God be good to all the boys a-sleeping out tonight, in blankets dry with cloudless sky, and make the moon shine bright. A drover's nightmare comes to life when cattle start to run, and there's been times on stormy nights when all has come undone. I've lost some parts and it was hard to leave 'em buried there, with wooden staves on shallow graves, a puncher's dread and fear. God watch over all the boys under stars tonight, no cattle stirring from their bed, and make the moon shine bright. Now I'm old, I stay at home while trail herds head up north. I'm too stove up to weather much or even set my horse. I've known my share of fat and spare, but wouldn't trade the past. When I was free on wide prairie, wind sighing through the grass. So God be good to all the boys a-sleeping out tonight, in blankets dry with cloudless sky, and make the moon shine bright. God watch over all the boys under stars tonight, No smell of rain upon the wind, and make the moon shine bright. Please God watch over all the boys sleeping out tonight.
When Terry Milliken shared a few of his memories, he really had my attention and had me spellbound with this story.
I had a mare die on top of me that was probably maybe it was the best horse I ever rode. Cow. She was only a 5-year-old mare, but she was so cowy. And I'd won the Cowboy Cutting at Douglas Lake when she was that same year, I guess. She was 5. But we're just running the cow along Coshana Creek, and the cow just ducked around some little jack pine that was probably that high. That mare turned and jumped through the jack pine, and it was kind of a real steep side hill like that. And it just happened there was an old windfall behind there in an old jack pine stump. You know how the roots stick up, and I didn't know it at the time. And the next thing I know, I was going through the air, and I was underneath this mare, and I was on the downhill side, and we're coming. Seemed like forever before we hit the ground, and then she landed on top of me. I knew I had wood oxbow stirrups, metal-bound oxbow stirrups, and I knew that stirrup was crushed on my foot. And I thought, oh God, here I'm in a hell of a fix. But for some reason, I knew that mare was dying. It just sensed it.
Yeah.
And she just kind of gave a little bit of a heave, and I managed to get my foot out from under the saddle, and she was dead. And but I got twisted that stirrup off, and I got up and I walked around in front of her, and there's just like a plug, like about that size, just inside her left arm there, and it was only sticking out about that far, and I grabbed it and I pulled it out, and that blood just like a gush.
Like a snag, a jack pine snag.
It was about that long, and it just either hit the heart or the one of the main veins in the heart, because it just like a gusher come out of there.
Yeah, chest pressure.
She was dead in seconds, when she fell on me.
Well, isn't that something? Because when she died, it might have saved your life if you were.
Yeah, I mean, she killed herself for me. That was.
Well, I hope you don't have too many more
no,
like that.
I'd quit cowboying if that happened very often. Yeah. That was pretty hard. That was pretty tough. That was in '78. I took a couple of weeks off after that.
Yeah. Well, Terry, I sure appreciate you sharing some of these thoughts and these stories on the Spirit of the West. It's just been great to visit with you, watch you work a little bit, and I hope it won't be too long before we can sit down and visit again sometime.
Yeah, I'd like to, Hugh, and it's been my pleasure.
You ain't much on crowds, but you're at home in a herd. You love the feel of good leather and the jingle in them spurs. And there are days that you wonder why you do what you do. But it's a torch that you were handed, not just the lifestyle that you choose. Hot and tired and dusty and cold to the bone, through the wind and rain and lightning, through the blowing snow. Sit tall in that saddle, yippee-ki-yay. You were born to carry on, so carry on the cowboy way. in the morning you'll cuss and swear you're getting old. But when you saddle up and leave that barn, you'll be riding that new colt. You don't trade stock on Wall Street, that ain't where you invest. You know your treasure lies over that next rise. Just keep on riding west. Hot and tired and dusty and cold to the bone, through the wind and rain and lightning, through the blowing snow. Sit tall in that saddle, yippee-ki-yay. You were born to carry on, so carry on the cowboy way. You were born to carry on, so carry on the cowboy way.
Paul Bogart and the Cowboy Way. Still to come, a classic song of the West and the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. The classic song of the West, picked out for this segment, has a story that's, I think, pretty well known now. Gene Autry's famous and talented sidekick, Smiley Burnett, was in the back seat. Gene was driving, and Smiley says, "Hey, Gene, I just wrote a song. Here, let me sing it for you." Well, he did, and Gene bought the rights to that song for $5 and made thousands with it. And here's Kyle Evans with that song.
When evening chores are over at our ranch house on the plains, then all I got to do is sit around. I saddle my old pony and ride on down the trail and watch the desert sun go down. Riding down the canyon, watch the sun go down. A picture that no artist ever painted. White-faced cattle lowing on the mountainside. I hear a coyote whining for its mate. Cactus plants are blooming, sagebrush everywhere. Granite spires are standing all around. I tell you folks, it's heaven to be riding down the trail when the desert sun goes down. Cactus plants are blooming, sagebrush everywhere. tell you folks, it's heaven to be riding down the trail when the desert sun goes down.
The Lone Birch Ranch has been home to Frank and Betty Gleason for a long time. And over the years, they've raised cattle, kids, grandkids, and horses there, and they've worked side by side in the hayfields, on the range, and in the cabin pen. And Betty, bless her heart, is a gem with, thank goodness, a great sense of humor. Here's Frank in the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight.
Yeah, you hear guys saying, well, I took my wife to Florida, I took her there, but usually they do the same as that. They probably wind up taking her to the dump. And this is what this poem is about. It's called My Wife. Now, I've got a wife that's as sweet as can be. She does all the things that mean so much to me. But back at the ranch, I don't get a chance to take her where she wants to go. Or we'll go for a walk, or we'll sit and we'll talk about horses and cattle and snow. But I never forget them special days, 'cause they're always there on my mind. When I buy her something real nice, you see, she knows I'm just being kind. Now, for her birthday, I bought her a pitchfork so she could help me clean out the barn. My socks were all holes and pretty darn cold, so at Christmas I got her some yarn. I got her a new garden weasel to help keep the weeds down, you see, and she's out in the sun and she's having this fun and she's happy as happy could be. And when she needs a change of scenery and says she's got to just get away, well, I take her to the back meadow, you see, and she can help me put up some hay. But of course you know I'm just joking, 'cause she is the love of my life. I'm glad it was me that found her, you see, in the day that I made her my wife. And when she needs some special attention, I give her a sexy little pinch on the rump, 'cause she is my pard, will clean up the yard, and then I'll take her for a trip to the dump. Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining up and riding along, and of course, thanks to our great support crew. That's Mark and Kathy McMillan. And be sure to pick up the latest issue of Canadian Cowboy Country Magazine. You can subscribe online at canadiancowboy.ca. Hope you can check out our YouTube channel. That's where you can hear and watch this show and many of our past ones from the archives. And you can also download it as a podcast. The links are at our website, hugh-mclennan.com. Till next week, I'm Hugh McLennan. Hope to see you down the trail somewhere real soon.